Sri Yukteswar was Yogananda's guru directly. Almost all of you have read Autobiography of a Yogi, and that book is to a great extent about, well, it is about the disciple-guru relationship. The very first sentence of the book, the characteristic feature of Indian culture has always been the search for eternal verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. That book, which has started and continues to inspire a global spiritual revolution beyond what we can even imagine at this point, starts with that sentence. The search for truth leads you inevitably to the relationship with the teacher. So there's just enormous amount implied, and I'm sure Master knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote that first sentence. Well, the reason Sri Yukteswar is on the altar is because his birthday is May 10th, which was yesterday. So I'm sure every so often in the second Sunday of the month and May 10th, Sri Yukteswar shows up on or right near Divine Mother's Day. Mother's Day, Divine Mother's Day, however you want to call it. They are not a pattern that you would automatically think of putting together. Whenever I'm trying to explain to people, why there is also this feminine expression of God, the Father, the Mother, and we don't do it just to be egalitarian and make women feel better. It's the reason that there are women and men is because this world is dual. Everything about this world is opposites that are always going back and forth with each other until everything resolves into the stillness of one. Everything emanates from that singularity of the divine, and what creates the illusion, these are just words to me, it's not that I can see through it, but I'll repeat them. What creates this illusion is there is movement. And once there's movement, it goes back and forth. And so we have these corollaries. They're not really opposites. They're just the two sides of the same coin, which is part of the craziness of this world, is that there's always two sides of the same coin. I received just a heartbreaking letter from someone who knows me from social media that I've never met. Very short note. My daughter, 30 years old, died giving birth, to my first grandchild. So here she is. All the joy of that has now become the opposite, and at the same time, there's still this new life to be loved. How do you put it all together? I mean, that's why you're all sitting here. Nobody comes into this room to whom it hasn't occurred that we have to figure this out. When I was growing up, I was born into a very nice family. I'm very grateful to the way my parents raised me. I have no dramatic story of trauma. In fact, I was always pretty happy. Everything went pretty well. I had the skills and the talents that are valued in our society, which is mainly that I was smart in school and I have a good mouth on me that I've always had. But it just was so utterly confusing to me. By intuition, not by anything I could say, but the whole story just seemed so crazy to me. And all anybody was ever talking to me about was how I would continue to be really smart in school, and then I would go to a good university, which I did. I went to that one right over there across the street, Stanford, at a time when you didn't have to be a crown prince or an Einstein to get in. It was a long time ago. But nonetheless, I felt in a very real sense that I was holding out until I got to university, because maybe there they would tell me something that I really wanted to know. And I learned a lot at the university. I learned that they didn't know either. I figured that out in about 2 weeks, that they had lots of knowledge, lots of skill, lots of intelligence, lots of education, but they didn't have wisdom. They were guessing just like everybody else around me. It's like, how do I reconcile all this opposite? Where is it that we just bounce from side to side? And then, of course, in the first sentence of the autobiography of a yogi, often people say the concomitant guru-disciple relationship, but that's not how Master put it, disciple-guru. Because it doesn't matter how many great wise souls there are all around you. You can have one standing right next to you. If you're not interested, that wisdom won't come into you. You won't even see it. You'll just keep walking until you find what matches you. I'm so amazed. I've done a great deal of travel in the last few years. I've been in many countries. I've mixed with many men. But everybody has a story. You know, every single one of you started somewhere, and you have all of these adventures, just like I've had. And each one of us were so involved in that story and all the ups and downs of it. And then the scriptures tell you it's all a dream. And you say, oh, come on. You know, how could it possibly be all a dream? It just takes our brains and just completely mixes them up. Well, coming all the way back to Sri Yukteswar and on the altar here, I've been trying for many years to sort of understand Sri Yukteswar. Some of us just are a little afraid of him because in Autobiography of a Yogi, he's very, very stern. And Master talks about how troubling it was for him. Master had a devotional nature, and he moved entirely in a different way. Sri Yukteswar was the cold mathematics of the spiritual life, is partly how he described him. But Yogananda himself said the more he tuned in to his guru, the more his own nature began to flower. So whatever the apparent differences are, and finally I have come to an understanding that I feel of Sri Yukteswar, which accounts for both his sternness and for the fact that he himself said in the Holy Science, the book he wrote, that no one takes a single step on the spiritual path without the power of love. So how does all of this come together? It must be our misunderstanding. When the masters seem to disagree with each other, it's probably not their problem, it's probably ours. But what he stands for is simply that which is another definition of Sanatana Dharma, the ancient principles upon which all this teaching is built. That which is, which I've translated in my mind to the inescapability of divine law. There are many divine laws that we're working with all the time, isn't it so? If you throw the apple up in the air, as Newton discovered, the apple will always come down again. Because even if you want the apple to stay up there, unless you have power over this plane, which some people do, it will just fall. It's just the way it is. I may wish to have retained the body that I had when I was 30, but just inexorably it keeps going. You love your little children, they're so adorable until they're not. You know? I was in a restaurant with my nephew, who's a big man, 6 feet and sturdy like this, and there was a family, how it often is, one baby, and the parents and the grandparents and a few others. So there's like 8 adults. Their entire focus is on the little baby. Little baby is so adorable. I mean, I was watching the little baby. You can't help it. And I wanted to take my nephew over and say, this is what happens. Because this is what happens. It's the inescapability of divine law. But you see, to us, that seems harsh. Why would the fact that when you throw the apple in the air, it always falls to the ground, why would we interpret that as harsh? Wouldn't we rather interpret that as very interesting knowledge that's relevant if I'm going to sit under an apple tree, for example? These are things that we need to know. If I'm going to try to step out of a high building, I'm going to hit the ground. We have to know these things. But in our human life, we're always kind of trying to push that it's going to be not the way it is, but the way that I want it. And now Divine Mother, and now I'll go back to Divine Mother is exactly the same. She can't change the rules for us, just like a loving human mother. She can't change the rules for you. Every so often, and unfortunately I knew one in my life, a woman who loved her children, but was so confused, quote, she never liked to hear her children cry. So she basically crippled them. And it was an unfortunate human tragedy that I watched. The children never learned the way things are, because the mother's so-called love was always to try to make the world fit what they wanted. Is that love? Is that really what we would do if we care about each other? Or wouldn't we, on the opposite side, try to help one another to see things as they are? And then what is the answer? Because, see, this is where Divine Mother comes into us. You see, the chaos of this world causes many people to become atheists, and I truly understand that. I've been sharing these teachings in many venues for many decades, and when people start thinking, somebody in the room will inevitably ask, what about the suffering of small, innocent children? And I said, well, there you have it. You've just gone right to the nub, haven't you? The apparent unfairness of the planet that we're living on. And it is not unfairness in a small sense, like some naughty person gets more money than you, or something like that. Nothing. It's unfairness that appears on a cosmic level, on a you don't know what to do with it level. And in our world right now, that kind of energy is creeping forward, isn't it? We have many friends in India, and recently, Pakistan sent some bombs into India. Israel's been fighting with Gaza for a long time. I don't have to tell you. People are starving over here. People are horrible over there. It's just the way it is. So is there a loving God in charge, or is this just completely a madhouse? What are the answers? And the weird thing about it, you see, is many people become absolutely convinced atheists or convinced hedonists or convinced libertines because they don't like how it seems. They can't come up with an answer, so they're going to make their own laws. I mean, we all went through it. My period of that was very short. It was over there at Stanford. That's how long it lasted. After 2 weeks, I basically stayed there and wasted my parents' money. But I just played. There was just nothing else to do. The Grateful Dead, the band that became so well-known, started here. And it started basically my first year of school, my only year of school. So, every Friday, wherever they were, we'd just go off and we'd dance and do all the other things that we did during those days, just for a while. But oh my, that was unsatisfactory. Just because of divine law. Pleasure and wisdom, pleasure and bliss are not the same thing. But see, here's the most interesting part of it. Part of the inescapability of divine law is that we were made for greatness. And we were made for joy. If we were made to be unhappy, if that was the divine law, all you human beings, you're here to suffer. There is no end, you will just constantly suffer. That's just what you're going to do. We would adjust to that. Human beings adjust to all kinds of strange things. But a very, very deep, irresistible, refusing to die part of us knows that we were made to be happy. And it's not just happiness, and it's not just pleasure, because pleasure just comes and goes. And especially it's depending on the body, and the body comes and goes. What we're really looking for is the power to choose. We want mastery. We want mastery over ourselves. One of my friends who was mildly interested in this path, but very much afraid that if they got serious about the spiritual life, then all the other things that they want, they wouldn't be able to have anymore. In that case, it was a young person, wanted family, wanted home, wanted money, wanted success, fine. I said, great, those are your objectives, that's your idea about what you want your life to look like. That's appropriate. It's an appropriate place to focus your energy. I said, what is the single greatest obstacle to your achieving those things? And my friend was honest enough to say, me, himself. In other words, his lack of ability to choose, his lack of self-mastery, his inability to really understand where to put his energy, and then the capacity to put it there. So if somebody really loves you, what are they going to do for you? Are they going to hand you everything just because you want it? Or are they going to help you develop the capacity to have what you really want, which is the ability to choose? That was the question that was asked to Jaya, one of our acharyas who was in India for many years. He's teaching these teachings, and someone asked him, as they often do in India, what are your credentials? Do you have cosmic consciousness? And unfortunately, or fortunately, most of us have to say, well, no, not yet, not exactly. And so they asked him, what are your siddhis? That's the word. What powers do you have? And at first, Jaya said, well, he was very honest, and he has a very clear mind. So he couldn't answer the question in the way it was asked. He couldn't wave his hand over the water pitcher and turn it into wine, or bring me a dead body and I'll resurrect it. But he thought for a moment. He said, my siddhi is that I have the capacity to choose happiness. Think about that for a minute. You can always just go buy wine if you really want it. But you can't buy happiness because of the inescapability of divine law. But, paired with that today, Sri Yukteswar and Divine Mother. And what Divine Mother is the comforter. That's how Jesus expressed it in the Bible. In the Bible, Jesus only talks about the Father. Every master has the same state of consciousness, but as soon as that master takes human form, he's bound by the culture he's in and by the people he's come to help. He's there to help his disciples, so he has to teach in such a way that it will help his disciples. And when Jesus was born, and he was born into the Jewish culture, into the Essene community there, and the problem was that the laws of Moses, the commandments of Moses, put down there, oh dear, a joke. Sunday school class of 7-year-olds, and the teacher says, who knows, they're studying the 10 Commandments, and they come to thou shalt not commit adultery. He asks the 7-year-olds, who knows what this means? Girl raises her hand. The sin of adultery is the sin of becoming an adult. The same Sunday school teacher apparently asked his children, what does the Bible say about marriage? And the same little girl raised her hand and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Okay, moving right along. At the time of Jesus, those inexorable divine laws had made God into an extremely fierce judge, which served the priesthood because then they were the arbiter of whether you would be saved or damned or had to do all these different things. And Jesus took it to the Father. Still, you could see it's the natural next step. He couldn't take it all the way to the Mother. But he said, after I am gone, I will send the Comforter. Can you think of a more perfect definition of a divine mother than the Comforter? Isn't that exactly? It's even when we know we're going to gather our strength and go back into the fray, we want to be comforted. Once I myself was having a very difficult time. I had to make some plans. In those days, I was very reluctant to commit myself in the future. I don't know why, but I was. And I was supposed to be arranging my own lecture tour at the time, and I just refused to commit. And so someone, trying to be helpful, which I really appreciated, thought they could inspire me to get over my anxiety by enumerating for me all the catastrophic things that would happen if I didn't just make a decision and go forward. Well, I was bright enough to know what all those problems were, and when they were enumerated in front of me, all it did was make me more frightened. And finally I said, I'm scared already. I said, what I need is to be comforted. And my dear friend just said, oh, yes, okay, well, we'll comfort you like this. But that's what I needed because I was afraid. Now think about us in our life. Isn't that, we know what we have to do, almost always. We just don't want to, or we're afraid. I learned, I've never raised children myself in this incarnation. I think I've been a mother a lot of times, but not physically in this time. So I had never heard this phrase until a friend reminded me of it recently. I don't want to and you can't make me. And isn't that? It's been my little mantra lately because I've been in that mood. I don't want to and you can't make me. It's like I know I have to, but I don't want to. I don't want to rise to it. I don't trust that I have the courage. I need to be comforted and told that I can do it. But the Divine Mother and Sri Yukteswar, they work hand in hand. Sri Yukteswar just quietly stands there, and you can have all the opinions that you want around it, but it doesn't change. And the Mother says, you can do it. Yes, you can do it. However, one of the ways that Divine Mother inspires us is she puts in front of us challenges that are much bigger than we think we can meet. That's what we're facing. That's what people face all the time. And once you start on the thought, and this is something, again, you have to think about your own life. How many times has the hardest thing that ever happened to you turned out to be the one that increased your power to choose? Where you thought you wouldn't be able to do it, all of a sudden you realize you can do it. So was that suffering a punishment? Was that a curse? Or was that a blessing? And then once that thought is in there, even in the slightest way, where does it stop? Now, of course, many other things are required here. The eternal nature of consciousness, the fact that we have many incarnations to work this out, that even one incarnation is just a story, that it's just school. This is the real school. It's not the university there or the university or any part of it. The school is life itself. And it's not meant to be an end point. When you go to the university, you don't expect to live in that dorm room forever. You're just there for a short time because there are things you have to face and master. So we live in this body. And we live in it for however many years it is. I've been in this one a long time now. So I know how short a long time is. It's very goofy is the only word I can use. It's just goofy. You think it's extremely different. But once you understand, then I'm just passing through here, however long it lasts. And what I'm trying to learn is the power to choose. To be able to choose what is my true nature, which is true freedom. Which actually brings us back, believe it or not, to the reading that we had today with this is the Martha and Mary. It's so, I love what Swami adds in there. The Bible is silent on whether Jesus asked Mary to help Martha, because it's quite possible that Martha had too much work to do and Mary needed to pay attention and serve in another way. The whole story is just about consciousness. Oh, Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about so many things. And so we think, well, maybe she has too many vegetables to cut or too much soup to make. Too many guests, somebody has to set the table. But a story like that doesn't just relate to the moment and is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. It's not what you're doing, it's your consciousness. But you see, we are worried and troubled about many things all the time. And Mary was quietly communing. And as Swami says in that writing, it's not a question of whether we're active or contemplative. It is, where is your consciousness? And so, yeah, sure, you can calm down while you're making dinner and realize that if it's a half an hour late, it doesn't matter. What if you're in a country that's about to go into a nuclear war? What if you're one of those children? We are worried and troubled about many things, but Mary has chosen the better part. And it's not that we don't have to keep doing whatever we're doing, but what are we doing with our consciousness, and why are we afraid? I have these words from Swamiji that I recently I found it in the book that I myself wrote, Lightbearer. But there's a lot of words in that book, and some of them have gone out of my mind, so the book is telling me things that I've forgotten by now. Swami writes, for one who has completely embraced the will of God, this world is as much a heaven as any place. He said, praise and calumny, success and failure, love and hate come to us as divine blessings. God alone matters. Everything else is a dream. And now that is a big ask, I'll tell you. You know? And so we have to balance. This is among the many, many challenges of the spiritual path. We can see how high the mountain is. And sometimes we just prefer to bring the mountaintop down. You know, we just lower it a little. And we make up a new teaching that is kind of similar to what Sri Yukteswar would say, but it's just a little easier. Just a little easier for us. But that doesn't really serve us in the end, because the apple, if you throw it in the air, will come down to the ground. So the balancing point of the spiritual life, and this is where the mother comes in. Mother has multiple children. And when the 4-year-old behaves a certain way, what is victory for the 4-year-old is not victory for the one who's 14 or the one who's 25. It's like we're all moving through certain stages, and we cannot rush that process. We cannot be different just because I want it to be different. We are standing exactly in the balance point of delusion and enlightenment, which is exactly our balance point. And the only way to go forward is one step at a time. And it's so much more entertaining to try to work out their karma than mine, isn't it? You know, to pretend that that's my karma, because that's more interesting than this one. It's always more interesting because this is the story. This is who I am. But what are we doing as we work out this karma? Are we fretting and worried about many things? Or are we choosing Mary's part, which is, all right, Mother, all right, Divine Mother, what am I supposed to do next? A wonderful friend of mine had some extremely unsavory habits, and he had become dedicated to being Master's child. He was a Kriyaban meditator, and at the same time, he was very worldly, extremely worldly in many of his habits. And so because Master said, you only have to do 1% of what he said to make serious spiritual progress, but everybody chooses a different 1%, that's why he has to talk so much. My friend found the line somewhere in Master's writings that said, even if you're doing things that you know are not right, take Master with you, take the Guru with you, take God with you. So my friend said, as a result, Master went to a lot of places I don't think he would have gone on his own. But as long as we're doing that, as long as we recognize I am here to grow ever closer to the infinite, to become ever more of who I am meant to be, and that even if we have many things that we feel compelled by our karma to do, we do them always we act as Martha with the consciousness of Mary, which is, I am a child of God. I am loved by my Divine Mother. Let's see, when Ronald Reagan was president, which a few of you in this room may still remember, his daughter lived in Southern California, and we all know this is gossip, and she would often go to Master's shrine, to Lake Shrine, for Sunday service. This is very exciting, to us, that somebody somewhere close to actual power in this country, external power, which is trivial compared to God's power, but there she was. And there was a monk still living then at that time at Mount Washington, Brother Turiyananda, who was a very powerful, forceful, frank, forthright man. And she went to see him. She went to the service. Afterwards, the minister there was shaking hands with people. Her name was Patty Davis. And she came and she introduced herself. My name is Patty Davis. My father is President of the United States. And Turiyananda said, "Oh, I'm Brother Turiyananda. My father is Lord of the universe." That's the truth of it. Just hold that. Don't worry about anything else. Just don't worry about anything else. Just remember, my father is Lord of the universe. My mother is the stars and the sky and is the great comforter. Hold on to that and everything else will follow. Bless you.